My next guest is City Councillor Brandon Tozzo from Kings Court Rideau Ward. Right. It is such a pleasure to have you come in today.
Thank you for having me.
Kick off the season.
Yeah.
So you're one of the new councillors. You're just coming up to a year. How are you enjoying it so far?
Oh, it's really delightful. You see the city, the province, and your community like you wouldn't expect from a very different lens. I think when you're campaigning, you're very focused on the issues of your district. But the moment you get elected, you have a whole city to govern, and it's a very different experience from anything I've ever done in my life. And it's a pleasure and it's an honor to represent my district and to be entrusted with this position.
I think a lot of people understand what goes on in City Council. I mean, here on YourTV, they cover the council meetings if you ever want to know what goes on. But I bet a lot of people think you work one evening every 2 weeks and that's the end of it, but not true. You sit on a lot of committees, and that's what I'd like to talk to you about. So a couple of them, one, housing, social housing. Mm-hmm. Wow, yeah. I don't think you can pick up a newspaper in this country and there isn't at least one article about housing. And it seems that all three levels of government are just pointing the finger at each other. Mm-hmm. And Kingston, we are not spared from housing being an issue. And you have that as one of your committees. So what do you think? Why are we in the position we are in Kingston? What is your take on it?
This is not amenable to a soundbite. There isn't one simple solution as to why we're in a housing crisis. I think there's multiple reasons of why we are where we are. First thing to recognize is we're in a national housing crisis. There are national reasons of why we're where we are. The first is I think that there have been policy changes at the Bank of Canada, which have lowered interest rates for the past few years through the pandemic. And what it did is it made the housing market a casino. It made it a place for investment and not a place for people to buy a house or rent an apartment. So much money got dumped into it. There was a frenzy to get into the market. That led to prices increasing for everybody. And this has created a problem of unaffordability. What we're seeing now with an increase of interest rates is this market start to correct itself. So there's that part of it too. The second part is that there has not been enough investment from the federal government in social housing and in affordable housing for about 40 years. They left it up to the market. Markets can do some good things, but they don't create affordable things. And there really has been a gap of affordable housing and investment in affordable housing for the past 40 years. So we are seeing the federal government start to get into it more and more, but I think it's too little too late. A challenge also is that social housing used to be a federal and provincial prerogative. They downloaded it to the cities, which frankly, like the cities, don't have the money and the resources to build and facilitate social housing. We're kind of maintaining what we have already. We need more proactive levels from other levels of government to get involved in this overall housing crisis. We also have had our population increase in Canada, and we haven't had housing increase in supply in order to meet those needs. So it's really a crisis of 3 or 4 things all together at once. It's not just one thing, it's many things put together, and we're just realizing it now in 2023.
It's starting to, yes, come back, and I think that the pandemic seemed to change a lot of things. It seemed to, I think people were that close, they were just making it, and then when they lost a paycheck, well, they lost their home, and then it just seemed to be a domino effect after that. And now yeah, I know, you just can't stop reading about it. Every newspaper has an article. Here in Kingston, what are some of the things that we're doing that, or what are the plans? What are the plans?
So again, because there isn't a one-size-fits-all solution, we're tackling this on many different levels. Okay. Part of it is that any dollar that we get from the federal or provincial government for healthcare, for mental health and addiction services, and for housing, we're getting out the door and we're building and we're putting it back into the community. So Sometimes there's a lag or there isn't enough, we take time in order to get resources to the people who need it. I've been incredibly impressed with the amount of money that we've gotten out the door and into where people need it very, very quickly. Whether it's Lionhearts doing outreach services for food or for the unhoused population, whether it's mental health and addiction services and working with Ryandale. Like, we are getting that money out there and we're getting it to the people who need it most. So I think we're really tackling the people who are more marginalized or sort of on the margins, and we're trying to target them as well. The city has also made a commitment to build over 450 affordable units and deeply affordable units in the next 4 years. Yes.
That's really impressive.
Yeah, so that's more than any other time in any 4-year period in our strategic plan.
Really?
So we are committed to creating more affordable units and more units as well for market-based rent, because it is a housing supply issue. We don't have enough houses for people. I've dealt with constituents who are competing for an apartment, and sometimes it's 10 people competing for one apartment. Like, there just isn't enough out there for people to be able to have a decent place to live. So the city is committing as much resources as it possibly can get, and we're kind of throwing everything we have at this crisis.
Something I've also heard is that Airbnbs have removed a lot of properties from the market. Is that true, or is that just somebody, again, wanting to point a finger?
The thing about Airbnbs is they're a symptom of a cause.
Okay.
There are Airbnbs that have pulled enough off the market. The amount is, I think, sometimes exaggerated.
Okay.
It is a certain amount. The problem is a lot of landlords are looking at the landlord-tenant board, which is a mess and has been a mess since the start of the pandemic, and they're getting out of it. They're just going into short-term rentals, which is a way of them to just have, flip their houses very quickly. I don't want to point the blame at the provincial government, but I'm going to point the blame at the provincial government.
Okay.
If the landlord-tenant board, I think, was more efficient, I think that you get more people going back into the traditional rental market. We're currently investigating the amount of impact that short-term rentals are having in Kingston, but we haven't gotten those reports back. We are regulating short-term rentals, and we are trying to clamp down on illegal ones, but the amount that it's really impacting the market, I don't know yet. So.
Okay, well, good to know, good to know. Are there any areas in the city that you say, if we could, we would do something with?
Yeah.
Anything like that coming up that you've spotted? That's your background. Is anything that you've spotted and you say, wow, we could really be doing something if we could only get our mitts on?
There are several things I really wish the city had the power to do. As weird as this sounds, I kind of wish we had more delegated authority over the landlord-tenant board.
Okay.
I wish we could enforce it. I wish we could regulate it. I wish we could add additional protections for tenants. That is and make it more efficient, pour the resources where it is. If you can't have justice at a landlord-tenant board, you can't have justice, period. And both tenants and people who are trying to get into the rental market really do suffer when a level of government fails. The other thing I really wish we had is we had far more resources for mental health and addiction services. People who are suffering, there are people there with addiction issues who have, again, you spoke earlier about the problems related to the pandemic. A lot of people turn to drugs and alcohol to deal with the stresses of the pandemic or unemployment. We've seen our unhoused population double in the past 4 years.
Really?
Double, yeah.
Double?
Yeah. These are people who dramatically need services, and the province has invested more, but it's nowhere near enough to meet with the crisis that we're having. Those would be really the two issues that I think would really, at least in my mind, in my experience on council, really help the city.
One I heard was they used to say, well, they become addicted, then they lose their home.
Yep.
But I've heard it's the other way around, that you become homeless, then you turn to the comforts of alcohol, drugs, whatever is available to you because you are homeless. This is one of the things I just heard recently. And I thought, how about that? Yeah.
I think when we're dealing with an unhoused population, we tend to think of there's a simple reason. And one thing, something that has really become really I've become more aware of is every unhoused person has their own story.
Yes.
They have their own history of trauma, they have their own reason, they have their own issues, they have their own background. There isn't a one-size-fits-all problem, and there isn't a one-size-fits-all solution. And I think, when I first got elected, I thought, okay, we just need to build more houses.
Yeah.
That's not the solution. Or we just need more mental health and addiction services. That's not the whole solution either. It really is a very complicated issue that deals with a lot of different socioeconomic, political, mental health related issues that leads to someone being unhoused and staying unhoused. So I'm really cautious about painting large brushes for a very complex population.
Yeah, I understand. You mentioned affordable housing. What is the definition of affordable housing? I've never been clear on that.
There isn't one.
Oh,
that's why you're not
okay,
clear
that's why
on
I'm
it.
not clear
yeah,
on
yeah.
that. Okay.
There isn't a definition of affordable housing. So affordable is, there's the sort of broader definition, which is usually 80% of market housing. But that's not very affordable. That's $1,300 a month.
Right, yeah.
That's CMHC. There's 60% of market housing, $1,000 a month. Not sure that's super affordable. And then there's rent geared to income, which is 30% of your total income going to housing. That's, I think, closer to the mark of what we talk about affordable. But if you're making $100,000 a year, what's affordable housing for you is going to be different than if you're making $30,000 a year. And this market is anything affordable. So the reason why you're not clear on the definition of what affordable is no one's clear on what the definition of affordable is. So you're in good company.
I had not thought about that, but
yep.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. There's so much to think about, isn't there?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, not an easy solution.
And what I would say is that the people who are in elected office, what we're dealing with, if problems were easy to solve, we would solve them.
Yeah.
The problems that we're seeing with mental health, addiction, homelessness, housing affordability, these are really, really challenging. And I'm not saying that, I don't have the answers to this. They're there because they're really multifaceted, and the solutions are expensive, they're complex, they require all levels of government working together, which frankly is just uncommon that happens. These problems exist, but it doesn't mean that there aren't good people in your city government who are working to try to do what they can to solve these problems. I've been very impressed in my year on council with the empathy from other councillors and the hard work of our city staff to try to mitigate some of this crisis.
And you've made it so clear. I've learned a lot, and I've really appreciated this. Thank you so much for coming in today.
Thank you for having me. It's my delight.
Thank you.